Okay, so Asus just released a video showcasing the ROG Ally, its complete specs, build, price, and release date. And I did not expect it to be so soon. It's releasing June 13th, a few weeks before my birthday. And the price is actually $599 for the Z1 lower end version and $699 for the Z1 Extreme 8 teraflops and change higher end model. It's only $100 difference. And right now Best Buy just has the higher end model available for pre-order, which I kind of figured they would do. They want to sell the more expensive model first, and then the lower end model, like I predicted, is going to get a lot more attention. So they're probably prepping all of those pre-orders for a later date, closer to the release date. But if you're just going to spend $600, you may as well just chip in the extra $100, because I feel like after $500, you just say screw it and you go for the extra $100 to $500 extra dollars on whatever you're going to buy, albeit a PS5 or a gaming laptop. So a $100 difference is nothing considering the processor that you're getting. And after my Dark Truth video about the Steam Deck, I feel like it's high time to try a Windows gaming handheld. And a lot of people in my comments about the ROG Ally not being too excited about it, they have stated that when it comes to Windows handhelds, you don't deal with a lot of updates. And I don't deal with a lot of updates with my Alienware laptop, which I love, but I do deal with a lot of updates with my Asus computers. So it's give or take when it comes to that in the interface. But not only did this news and presentation, a 2-hour presentation, drop recently, IGN also released an ROG Ally review. I'm not sure if they actually got their hands on it or if it was just during their presentation or their first impression, because it sounded like they didn't have too much time with the system. But I'm assuming they have the actual Z1 Extreme model, like they say. And apparently the battery life at 1080p is an hour and 30 minutes, which is insane. But I'm assuming when you put the settings up to 1080p, 120 FPS, you're gonna probably get like 45 minutes with the thing. And I would actually be surprised if you get that sort of time frame with the device at 120p, because I actually have a monitor that goes 120 FPS at 1080p with an internal battery, and that battery lasts 5 hours. So Asus is no stranger to implementing a battery with a 1080p 120 Hz screen, but there's a lot more hardware behind it. So 45 minutes kind of sounds realistic. Considering how incredible 120 Hz is, that sounds like a mind-blowing experience. And IGN ultimately gave the ROG Ally an 8 out of 10. But enough about the review. You guys can just look that up online. You probably already saw it if you're interested in the handheld itself. The presentation was kind of awesome. They started off with naming handhelds and their history, including the Nintendo Game Boy, and giving us a whole synopsis on the evolution of handheld gaming. And I thought that was actually pretty cool. Their presentation was better than the Steam Decks, but I'm really excited to pre-order this thing. I'm definitely going to get the $699 Z1 Extreme at my local Best Buy, because the Best Buy where I'm living near has a ton of rare products. Most of the time when PS5 was hard to locate, they had PS5s in stacks. So I'd be surprised if the Z1 Extreme is sold out so quickly. But I'm going to kind of clamor and pre-order when I can. It's just an exciting time to be a handheld gamer because you have a lot of competition now. The thing is, I still wouldn't worry about the Steam Deck because it is a different type of platform. It is Valve's Linux-based Steam OS. So it is an entirely different experience, and it is a true console feel with the Steam Deck. And to me, Asus never really got that console feel down for their gaming laptops. So instead of coming out with an entirely new Armory crate, they just have a special edition which is tweaked for the Ally, which instead of that, I would have liked them to make an entirely different interface altogether. But I know how Asus is, and if they did that, it would be just a lot more work for them, and it probably wouldn't be as versatile as a special edition of the Armory crate that we already have. But I do think implementing Armory crate into this handheld is a smart idea. But considering the processing and just sheer power that the ROG Ally is giving us, $700 is a complete steal. There are gaming laptops out there with the thermals that they're presenting to us and conceptually giving to us, which IGN can back up, that can easily go up to the prices of $1,500 or more. And 8 teraflops is damn near a PlayStation 5's power. So I'm just excited to see the future of handhelds, but it seems like we're already there. I mean, just last year, I was asking myself, what year are we in? Because the Steam Deck has blown my expectations away for what a handheld can do. And now Asus ROG Ally is coming out within just a month, and it's 8 times more powerful than what we got last year. So I don't even know if I should even get the ROG Ally, because something even better might come out the next year after that. But I love the aesthetic of the ROG Ally, and I wanted a Windows gaming handheld just to see how it operates. I actually wanted to install Windows in the Steam Deck, but I heard so many nightmarish stories about that, so I decided against it. And also, when it comes to pretty much any game, they're going to take up 1 gigabyte of shader cache by default. I just recently tried to play Resident Evil 6 yesterday, which is like a 15-year-old game, and the shader cache was 5 gigabytes for that. So considering my internal space just keeps getting taken up by the inevitable shader cache, it just seems like a ticking time bomb and just a timer in general that leads to the end of my library. And I know Valve is going to come out with a new update to SteamOS that cuts that by 65%, but it can't come soon enough because the ROG Ally is just coming in a month, and that don't need no shader cache. So instead of just relying on Valve to come up with yet another 100th SteamOS update, I'll just get the ROG Ally and it'll just feel complete from day one in terms of OS and lack of shader cache. I am not going to miss that. Good riddance to shader cache and the Proton layer, messing with Proton 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 45 or 50 Proton versions that I had to go through. Just spending hours and hours. Hey, I want to play this game. Oh, Proton version's not working for it. Let me go to another one. Yeah, there can easily be a part 2 to the dark truth story of my Steam Deck because there's so much that I left out. But anyway, let me not go on a tangent about the Steam Deck because I even recently went through something, including that Resident Evil 6 shader cache update. But I'm definitely going to get the higher end version of the ROG Ally. And they also announced the expandable ROG XG mobile lower end and higher end models will be available. The higher end, I doubt anybody would even consider getting because it's $2,000. The lower end is $800, which is $100 more than the higher end Z1 Extreme Ally, which is fantastic. You can have an incredibly powerful dock for the ROG Ally, so you won't have to worry about overheating the system if you're going 4K or anything like that. So it's a safe bet that a lot of people will be picking that up and the ROG Ally, but most people don't want to spend around $1,500, so most likely they'll get sales just for the lower end, probably a few months after. But another thing to go over is the actual presentation itself. I like how after the initial presentation and the price drop and release date drop, Sean, the presenter for Asus in the live stream, went over to Microsoft to talk to them about Windows. So they had an expansive conversation about how they're implementing Windows and making it easier for users to access it. Because I know that Asus has a very close relationship with Microsoft, and they have to because a lot of the best-selling Windows computers are either Asus or Alienware. Third or fourth place would be MSI. But it was fascinating to listen to all of the Windows stuff. Even though I don't trust a word that they say, they could easily just throw ads on Windows while we pre-order the system so they can have more control over the interface. Who knows what Windows is going to do down the line, so I would probably turn off updates, but then again, who knows what kind of new features they're going to implement, especially if it comes to power saving. And I think that Windows is working on a mobile version, which I stated in a video a couple weeks ago. And if Windows is going to add a transformative update like mobile mode, which they're potentially going to add to Steam Deck because apparently Steam Deck still doesn't quite work well with Windows, that could add an easier way to put your system to sleep and to resume, and could add more compatibility with handheld features such as that. I think it's going to be a very interesting second half of the year, considering the Asus ROG Ally is an actual real competitor. The leaked prices were 100% real. It's actually going to be $599 for the lower end model, which is almost 2 times more powerful than the Steam Deck. A lot of people are saying it is 2 times more powerful. The Steam Deck is 1.6 teraflops, while the Z1 model for ROG Ally is 2.5 teraflops. So it's not quite there. It would need to be 3.2 teraflops to be 2 times more powerful, but it is considerably more powerful. But I wouldn't get that model because it's just about 1 teraflop more powerful, and that's going to probably be outdated in less than a year, just like the Steam Deck. And considering the momentum of handheld PCs that we're getting, it's probably going to be outdated by the end of the year. So I would go with the 8 teraflop Z1 Extreme model. That's most likely going to last another 3 or 4 years. The Steam Deck could possibly last another 1 or 2 years, but that's maximum at this point. When it comes to PC gaming, hardware is very fickle with games. A lot of software engineers and game developers are very unhinged when it comes to the requirements for their games and software. And that's why we're already seeing some games not being compatible with the Steam Deck, like Returnal, even close to 6 months after its release. The Last of Us Part 1, even though the optimization for that game is terrible, it works fine on my gaming laptop for the most part. But just optimizing it for a system like Steam Deck is going to be more and more difficult. So jumping to a native Windows handheld like the ROG Ally with 8 teraflops just sounds like the most practical thing. And I'm most likely not going to play at 1080p. I'm probably just going to do 720p if that helps the battery life. But getting back into the IGN review of the ROG Ally, it did say the interface was a little difficult to deal with and to customize, comparing it to the Steam Deck. But I think we should all just give it a little bit of time, a few months, so they can get used to user feedback to make more tweaks to Windows, which correlates with the ROG Ally and its proprietary software. Because just like the Steam Deck, it's going to need a few more tweaks in terms of condition and how you use that handheld. And the Steam Deck has seen countless tweaks, too many to count. We're already up to almost the 500th Steam OS update. So suffice to say, ROG Ally could take its time, because if there's anybody that understands that a handheld just needs a little bit of tweaking in terms of software, it's Steam Deck users. But I remember when Gabe from Valve was talking in an interview about the Steam Deck, and they were just in this cozy little office talking about it, and it felt so homey and it felt very personal. Meanwhile, you have Asus with a skyline talking to Windows about their handheld. It just shows the difference in budget and business. Asus really does mean serious business when it comes to the Ally, and it's clear. The presentation was beautiful. Everything about this event was everything anybody wanted from it. I mean, they even gave us a list of the materials they used to make the Ally. I didn't even ask for that. But I am a little cautious about the aluminum. I know that the plastic that was used with the Steam Deck doesn't warp, but the Steam Deck is a lot bigger than an ROG Ally. And the ROG Ally is made of aluminum. And when it comes to aluminum, with companies like Apple warping their phones, I'm a tiny bit cautious about the placement of the thermals and fans and the fact that it's going to be cased in aluminum. So warping, if you are putting the ROG Ally in your pocket or your jacket pocket, it might see a little bit of warping if you leave it on by mistake, or if it doesn't automatically go to sleep, like a lot of these Asus, Alienware, and MSI laptops do because of Windows incompatibility. Sometimes it is a bit difficult to put your system to bed. I know that happened even with the Steam Deck, where it just didn't want to turn off, and it happens all the time with my laptop, which has the Windows OS installed into it. So if you are getting this by next month, I would be cautious about making sure it's asleep before putting the system away, because it is encased in aluminum. I'm sure the aluminum is going to be strong enough, but it is lighter, and they did make that a point that they wanted it to be 608 grams as opposed to 680 grams. And so they had to cut sort of cost and material, which is not a bad thing if you want to make it light. But to close this off, I would be so surprised if Asus isn't at a loss with this system, considering how extremely powerful it is and small. I would think we'd be doing Asus a disservice and not buying this system. But we also have to make sure, especially since the PlayStation 5 days, that there aren't going to be a ton of scalpers for this. That's why I'm pre-ordering it now. But I hope Best Buy has some kind of contingency plans and special conditioning for pre-ordering this, because I was on the waiting list to pre-order this. So I'm assuming that's why I got the email before the presentation went up. But yeah, it was a fantastic presentation. I have no complaints. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. Actually, the Nintendo Switch got a 7. And the Steam Deck actually got a 7 as well. So the ROG Ally got 1 point higher than a Steam Deck. IGN likes the ROG Ally a little more than the Steam Deck. And when it comes to how complicated these handhelds are, that's a big difference, especially since the Steam Deck has changed so much. I wonder what they would give it right now if they were reviewing it today. Probably the same score, considering how many complications the Steam Deck has even till this day. say, but I think they would be around the same score. But give Asus ROG Ally a year and it will most likely be a masterclass handheld, especially if they make sure to put Windows in the back seat. And yeah, let me know what you think about the ROG Ally and Asus's presentation of it. Are you going to pre-order yours today? Or are there still some questions you have about it after the presentation that's preventing you from clamoring to pre-order this device right away? And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good one. Later.